So today I thought compare the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M3 and the MacBook Air M1 for those considering the upgrade like myself. I guess some of you might also be cross-shopping between these, considering 3 years later the M1 Air is still available through a plethora of retailers for around $600 to $700, and so should you be paying more for the Pro? Well, let's delve in. So let's begin with the biggest change between these two MacBooks, and that of course is the design. The MacBook Pro does make the M1 Air look relatively ancient. I like the thinner bezels, and also the additional real estate the 14-inch size offers, and while the Pro is substantially thicker and bulkier, the rounder corners are actually quite nice because the sharper corners on the Air do scratch and dent pretty easily. And for those wondering, does the additional weight to the 14-inch make a big difference? Honestly, no, I can put up with a slight increase in weight for the bigger display this has. And by the way, I generally forget the notches there, it's a non-issue in my opinion. And also the larger function row with the new design's an underrated change because it does make the keys and the Touch ID sensor easy to reach and press on the machine. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. The new design isn't perfect though, because after using both these machines extensively, I do miss the wedge. Not that wedge, this wedge. It does make the typing experience slightly nicer on the older Air, and of course, it also was a unique design element that separated it from the rest of the range, so it's sad to see the wedge is dead, since the current Airs have adopted a flat design similar to the MacBook Pros. And I do want to take a moment to give the M1 Air some credit, because this design is still very premium, and for those coming from older laptops, there is still a lot to like here with the builds. It's a design that debuted back in 2018, but it still looks pretty fresh. Also, while the Pro only comes in silver and space grey, which are pretty boring shades, you can get the Air in a snazzy gold, so that's an advantage the older machine has. Now when it comes to ports, it's very nice to have MagSafe, the SD card reader, and the HDMI ports, but I'll be honest, as someone who has been using the MacBook Air for 3 years now, I have got used to just having 2 ports, and I can make 2 with it. But of course, I understand some people need their ports, and so this is a Pro for the MacBook Pro. Moving on to performance, if we compare the benchmarks of these 2 machines, we can see that M3 is a relatively major upgrade over M1 on paper. The numbers are definitely bigger, but that doesn't necessarily translate to real life usage. Even today, M1 is more than fine for my use, and it really goes to show how monumental this upgrade was, because even after 3 years of this being on the market, regular usage between these machines are very similar for the most part. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone, and basing this on my usage, which is 4K video editing every single day, alongside the usual mix of emailing, writing up documents, and also typing up scripts, and watching YouTube and movies occasionally. So for my kind of use, I really have not picked up on a big difference. I don't even hear the fan very often in the 14-inch, mainly because Apple Silicon is so efficient, so that means the fanless design the M1 has is a non-issue because this machine is still very powerful, and I've had 0 throttling issues. By the way, I don't ever play games on my Mac, so I haven't been able to test hardware ray tracing, but if you do care about that and you're excited about the possibility of gaming on the Mac, then of course you might be able to justify the premium for the new Pro. Really, the only clear-cut advantage M3 offers, in my opinion, is that because it's newer, it will get longer support, but considering M1 was such a massive upgrade, I would not be surprised if we do see 10 years of support overall. So of course, at this point forwards, we should still see 6 or 7 years of support on the older MacBook Air. But even if you buy the 14-inch for the additional longevity it offers, there will be a major bottleneck with this machine, which of course is 8 gigs of RAM. Now I won't lie to you guys, I did not pick up on this Mac ever slowing down because it did not have enough RAM, since unified memory on Apple Silicon's generally great. However, I don't think that's always going to be the case. You see, as the machine gets older and it becomes more taxing for the machine to run new versions of applications you use on a regular basis, I am very sure 8 gigs of RAM is going to start to become a bit of an issue. And so while it's fine for most right now, I still think there should have been 12 gigs of RAM in this to future-proof it. And I know the MacBook Air M1 also comes with 8 gigs of RAM, but of course, it's a lot cheaper, and so for the price you can find this for nowadays, 8 gigs of RAM is perfectly fine. In fact, you could probably buy a refurb 16GB MacBook Air for less than the 14-inch, which is what I have, and there's been zero RAM issues. Moving to the display, there is a stark difference between these models. The 14-inch has one of, if not the best display on a laptop right now. It blows my mind that Apple has given the base 14-inch the same exact panel as its higher-end counterparts, but I appreciate the mini LED, I appreciate the high brightness. I don't really care for 120Hz, but it's nice to have. And ultimately, this could be a big reason a lot of consumers upgrade to this machine, especially if you watch a lot of movies and TV shows. This display is perfect. However, that doesn't mean the MacBook Air's display is unusable. Yes, it lacks mini LED and also 120Hz, which is going to bother the techies, but I actually don't mind the lack of these features. Apple's LCDs are very solid. It offers P3 support and True Tone like the Pro, and 400 nits of brightness is still perfectly fine, and at the end of the day, this essentially has the same panel Apple's been using for years on MacBooks. It's tried and tested at this point, and Apple still uses a version of this panel with the current MacBook Airs, so yeah, it's completely fine. The main thing I appreciated was the additional real estate with the 14-inch, but the actual displays on these Macs are both awesome in my opinion. I guess the best thing to do is try out these Macs in person, and if you can appreciate the better display on the MacBook Pro, then of course, you can justify the upgrades. Moving on to the cameras, mics, and speakers, I would say there's a big difference in one of these departments. Both have solid mics, and while the webcam surprisingly isn't that different on the 14-inch even though it's 1080p, the speakers make a big difference. It's quite crazy because I have been perfectly fine with the MacBook Air M1 speakers, and don't get me wrong, they're still good, but as soon as I got the 14-inch and I played some music with those speakers, my mind was blown. They sound incredible. It's crazy such a small machine can produce this much volume and clarity. It's quite insane. And also do remember you get spatial audio support with the 14-inch, which makes a difference when using AirPods. So overall, for content consumption, the great display and speakers are a killer combo. Keyboard-wise, as I said, I do like the larger function row, but this essentially is the same Magic Keyboard we had on the M1, so that's to say it's the gold standard. And the same goes for the trackpads. And in case you're wondering if Touch ID is faster with the Pro, I did test that, and no, that's not the case. Though to be fair, the M1 was already good enough in this aspect. Connectivity-wise, the 14-inch does offer newer standards as one expects. It's a new machine, so that makes sense. And in this case, it's Bluetooth 5.3 and Wi-Fi 6E compared to Bluetooth 5 and Wi-Fi 6 on the M1. Now, unless you have a Wi-Fi 6E router, you're not going to be able to tell much of a difference between these machines in terms of Wi-Fi speeds, and Bluetooth has also been rock solid on both machines. Now let's move on to the final big difference between these machines, which is the endurance. Apple's site claims the MacBook Pro gets you 22 hours of endurance compared to 18 hours on the Air, though do note, this is Apple TV playback numbers, and in my test when editing videos for 2 hours, I noticed the MacBook Pro lost 9% of charge compared to 13% on the Air, so basically, both these machines are terrific battery-wise, and will definitely blow away every Windows machine on the market. I will mention though, the M1 Air has dropped to 88% battery health after 3 years of use, so as one expects, the battery life isn't as great as it once was, and so that is an advantage the 14-inch has because naturally since it has a larger battery, 3 years down the line, it is going to perform better than the M1. You do also get a much faster power adapter in the box of the 14-inch, so overall there are some big upgrades battery-wise. So that's everything broken down for you guys, and so let's answer the 2 questions I proposed initially in the video. Number 1, should you upgrade? Well, I'm in that position right now, and I'll be honest guys, personally speaking, it's hard for me to justify the upgrades. The 14-inch undoubtedly is the better machine with mini LED and better speakers. It does make a difference, but it's also a lot more expensive and only comes with 8 gigs of RAM as standards, and when my M1 Air still chugs along just fine, I'd rather just keep this and wait for M3 to get cheaper. At the time of recording, there are some discounts from third-party retailers, which have definitely made the M3 model a lot more enticing, but I probably want a 16GB model, which of course, Apple only conveniently sells, thank you for that. So I'm gonna have to wait for the M3 to hit the refurb store to get a discount, and then I'll decide if it's worth upgrading, but for the most part guys, my M1 Air still works perfectly fine for my use, so yeah, the new machines just aren't compelling enough for me to upgrade. And I'm sure many of you guys are in a similar boat. M1 was just too good at launch, and so I don't think I'll be getting rid of this anytime soon. Anyways, the second question is of course, If you're cross-shopping between these for some reason, which should you buy? Well, the prices are drastically different between these machines, but as of late I've been seeing many great deals on the M1 MacBook Air. They've been going for £500 to £600 in the UK, and I'm sure that applies to the US and other countries. So if you do find it for cheap, this easily offers the best bang for your buck. You cannot beat the value of the M1 Air. It's a terrific machine. And honestly, if the base 14-inch came with more than 8 gigs of RAM as standard, that would have been great value at retail price, but because it didn't, it's only decent value, and so I can totally understand why someone would save their cash and go with the M1 Air instead. The core experience at the end of the day is going to be very similar. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.